Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Pro Football Network 2021 NFL Draft Recap. Today, we will be doing the NFC North Draft Recap, and with me, Dalton Miller, we have our draft insider at the Pro Football Network, Pauline. First of all, Tony, how are you doing today?
Okay, good to be back on video, I guess, after a little break since the night before the draft with 𝗙𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗧𝗨𝗕𝗘. But a lot of work draft weekend with the team at Pro Football Network. I think we did a good job. I hope the fans enjoyed it.
Yeah, and obviously the draft week is a massive undertaking. It's nice to have a little bit of time to kind of just reflect and decompress a little bit after that. But we're going to do this. We're going to go through alphabetical order here and talk about these teams. Tony, the Chicago Bears, how did you feel about their draft overall?
Well, I mean, if you watched the show with 𝗙𝗢𝗥𝗘𝗧𝗨𝗕 in the weeks leading up, the show we do, the Draft Insiders podcast, I had said, and I wrote it in the draft notes, that the sense I was getting is that the Chicago Bears were desperate to come away with the quarterback within the first two rounds of the 2021 draft. That's exactly what they did when they made that huge trade with the New York Giants, gave away a number one pick next year, as well as additional picks to get Justin Fields. Now, right off the bat, they got their quarterback. They got a potentially very good quarterback in Justin Fields, a guy who physically is as gifted as any of the top QBs in this draft, especially when you look at the arm talent. As I said time and time again, he gets the ball downfield with 50 yards speed and spin with no problem at all. The question is, are the Chicago Bears, Bill Lazor, offensive coordinator, and Nagy, the head coach, able to develop Justin Fields? Because they couldn't do it with Mitch Trubisky, and they used a very high draft pick on Mitch Trubisky. So I think it's a good pick. I understand why they gave all the choices away. And I think for better or worse, this draft class is going to hinge on how Justin Fields does and their ability to develop or not develop Justin Fields. I thought Teven Jenkins at the top of round two was another exceptional pick. He's an athletic guy. They have a screaming need at tackle. Now they have a screaming need at left tackle. Teven Jenkins is a athletic right tackle at Oklahoma State, fundamentally sound, mobile, athletic, can block on the line of scrimmage in pass protection or get out on the second level. A lot of people like myself projected him as a first rounder, but as I had said a couple times, he did not do well in interviews. He was not coming across well, not show a lot of confidence. There were questions about him, but still, he's got the underlying ability, and the tape doesn't lie, and the tape shows that he's a very good offensive tackle. Larry Borom of Missouri, an offensive tackle that they move into guard, was a fifth-round pick. Khalil Herbert and Daz Newsome, I think, two sixth-round selections were steals. Herbert is a guy who I think will fit right in with that system. He's going to work well with Tariq Cohen as a guy who complements David Montgomery. He's a breakaway threat who is an exceptional pass catcher out of the backfield, a guy who can turn the corner, but someone who also run on the inside and will pick and choose his spots. Daz Newsome, very reliable pair of hands, not the fastest guy in the world, but someone that can consistently come away with the ball on underneath routes. I also thought that Thomas Graham in the sixth round was another good value for the Chicago Bears. A guy who's probably going to play in nickel or dime packages, showed flashes during his career at Oregon, showed flashes during 3 days of Senior Bowl practice. He's got good size, he's got good speed, just needs to polish his game. Yeah,
and Tony, what about the UDFAs, the undrafted free agents that the Chicago Bears brought in?
One guy, well, they signed a couple of good guys. I like CJ Marabell of Coastal Carolina, although he's like the Tariq Cohens and the Khalil Herberts. Daniel Archibong of Temple's another good defender up front for them. Khalil McLean, the receiver from Troy, he was someone who got high grades from scouts coming into the season, but it was very disappointing. The name to keep an eye on is obviously Charles Snowden, the big, tall outside linebacker from Virginia. He fits the Bear system. He's a tall guy. He's a smart, instinctive football player. He's got to get a little bit bigger. A little bit of a thin frame in the lower half of from the hips down. Also was at Senior Bowl practices, but was unable to take part because of a foot injury. He's got a high upside. I like the Charles Snowden signing. I think this is someone that if he gets a little bit bigger and is able to add bulk to his frame and really learn how to rush the passer, this is going to be a find as a UDFA.
And that's the role that you see him in, as a primary pass rusher and not necessarily a full-time off-the-ball linebacker?
Well, I mean, he was a solid off-the-ball linebacker at Virginia. In fact, Virginia used him more in space than they did up the field. But I think with that frame, I mean, the guy goes about 6'5".
Yeah.
He looks more like a power forward than he does a football player. He's got to get a little bit bigger in the lower body. And he's smart and he's tough and he's shown pass rush ability in the past. Virginia just never really used him like that. But I think he's a good fit for the Bear system, someone that you can stand up over tackle and occasionally drop off the line in plain space.
All right, now switching gears over to the Detroit Lions here. They went really big in the trenches in the first 3 picks, and then they went towards the skill positions. How did you feel about their draft?
I think Dan Campbell basically drafted guys at the top of the event that fit his profile. Big, strong, tough, punch in the face type of players. They start off with Penei Sewell, who in my opinion was an absolute no-brainer. I mean, the best left tackle, the best offensive tackle, the best offensive lineman this year's draft, even though he opted out last season. He's big, he's athletic, he's mobile, he can block on the line of scrimmage, he's outstanding in pass protection, he can get out on the second level. I like him better at left tackle rather than right tackle. Right now, he's evidently pinned in at right tackle on the Detroit Lions depth chart. We'll have to see what happens with that. Second round choice, Levi 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗧𝗨𝗕𝗘 from Washington. He was considered a potential late first round pick. I think it was good value where Detroit got him in the second round. He's a perfect fit on the inside of a 4-man front. He's quick, he's explosive, he's got great first step quickness. He can rush the passer as well as play against the run. He's got to get a little bit stronger, doesn't have a big thick frame for a defensive tackle, but he beats opponents with his quickness and explosion. Alim McNeill was a guy who was really moving up draft boards in the weeks before the draft kicked off. I thought it was good value in the third round. He's a wide-body 3 technique guy, who has a great first step off the snap. He plays with outstanding fundamentals at ped level, uses his hands well. Would just like to see him play to his size a little bit more. I thought both of their 4th round picks were absolute steals. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think coming into the season, was a potential late first round pick. Did not play as well in 2020 as many thought, although it was tough to play, have a good season in the Pac-12, considering that with that late start and the fact that you didn't know if you were going to be playing week to week. Plus, USC always finds good receivers, and Amon St. Brown basically became the number 2 target out there at USC. But still, he's a reliable guy who's got sneaky speed, only ran 4.5 during his pro day, but he can get downfield. He's going to catch all the underneath routes. I absolutely love the selection of Derek Barnes in the 4th round, the linebacker from Purdue. I think he's going to be a great middle linebacker for the Lions. Again, another Dan Campbell type of guy. Smart, instinctive, but really tough, and a punch in the face type of guy. And they finish off with Jamar Jefferson, the underclassman from Oregon State, who had a record-breaking campaign last year. Solid rotational back. I never projected him as a starter, but I think he's got a decent amount of upside. You keep him between the tackles, occasionally throwing the ball out of the backfield. He'll do a good job for you.
And which of the UDFAs for the Detroit Lions really stand out to you, Tony?
Yeah, they signed a lot of UDFAs compared to the other teams. Obviously, the big name here is Sage Surratt, the wide receiver from Wake Forest, a guy who had a knee injury at the end of the 2019 season, sat out last year. He's not a very fast guy, but he's tall. I mean, he stands out on film because he is so tall and lanky. Solid pass catcher. The problem with Surratt is he lacks quickness, he lacks speed. He's more of a guy who's going to win out on the contested throw. He's going to struggle to separate, but still, on those 3rd and short situations where you're going to throw the ball, in the red zone when you throw the ball, he's a target. As is Javon McKinley out of Notre Dame, another outstanding signing, I thought. A guy that's got great size and speed. He's got tremendous upside. He's coming off a real good season. I was surprised that he wasn't selected somewhere in day 3, but he's got a great amount of upside. If he continues to develop his game and build upon the 2020 season, I think he's going to be a real good player in the NFL.
Going over to the Green Bay Packers, what did you feel about their draft? I know they needed offensive tackle a little bit. They didn't get one until later. You know, Aaron Rodgers, is he going to stick around? They went wide receiver in round 3. Do you think that they did enough to maybe make him happy?
No. I mean, that was the big story. I mean, right before the draft started, and it was a story that I was alerted to back in March, but I found it so unbelievable and so far out in left field that I was like, I'm just going to leave this one alone. But obviously, you know, the Rodgers situation has been building for some time. I don't think they did any favors for him or any favors to keep him in the mix with what they did in the draft by finally selecting a receiver in the third round. Granted, most of the receivers were off the board by the time they were called to the clock at 29, unless they wanted to take in Elijah Moore or Rondell Moore. Elijah Moore of Mississippi, Rondell Moore of Purdue, both game breakers who went in the early part of round 2. I thought Eric Stokes at the top of the draft was an interesting choice. I thought there were better cornerbacks available, but he's tall, he's athletic, super fast, ran in the 4.2s during his pro day, has a great amount of upside. He's what the Packers want at the cornerback position. That Kevin King type of tall, athletic guy, just got to develop him. He's got a lot of upside. I don't know that he's NFL ready, but he's heading in the right direction. I thought Josh Myers, late in round 2, was an outstanding selection, a guy who I think can be a starting center for years to come. Amari Rodgers, not the fastest guy in the world, but very reliable. Short, you're going to use him in the slot. You're going to have him run crossing patterns. You're going to use him as a punt returner. Not a game breaker, but when he's got to get down the seam or down the flanks, he'll catch the ball as a vertical receiver, one of Trevor Lawrence's favorite targets last season. I love the pick of Royce Newman in round 4. They have him at guard. I think he can play right tackle. He's a big, tough guy, terrific run blocker who moves opponents off the line of scrimmage, does hold his own in pass protection, doesn't show great footwork, but does enough with his body positioning and angles to keep players away from the quarterback, to keep the quarterback upright. Terrell Slanton of Florida is more of a nose tackle who I think is a good fit for that position that the Packers play. Shamar Jean-Charles of Appalachian State, another bigger cornerback, better facing the action. You may have to kick him into safety, maybe use him in his own type system. I thought Isaiah McDuffie was great value. Isaiah McDuffie of Boston College was great value in the 6th round, a guy who's more of a pursuit, run and chase type of linebacker. And Kylan Hill in the 7th round, I don't know why he fell as far as he did. I had him as a 4th rounder. Kind of had an up and down season last year at Mississippi State. Didn't get along with the coach. Was upset that he was not carrying the ball as much as he wanted to. Was actually catching the ball more. But he had 3 good days of Senior Bowl practice. Had a good 2018 and even better 2019 when he almost entered the draft. I think that was a good pick for what is already a packed and stacked depth chart at running back for the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we really wanted to see from him coming into 2020 was his ability to catch passes. So I think that's one thing that I thought was going to help his draft stock a little bit. I was surprised that he fell that far as well. How did you feel about their undrafted free agent?
Got to keep an eye on is Christian Uphoff of Illinois State. He's going to add depth to the safety spots for the Green Bay Packers, but more than anything else, he's a guy that's going to be an outstanding special teamer. I'm sure that they signed him as much for his ability on coverage units, both kick and punt coverage units, as they did for him in the defensive backfield. And it's something that's going to get lost among people, but it's something to keep an eye on.
Finishing up the NFC North draft recap with the Minnesota Vikings here. 1, pick in the 1st round, and then they had 4 in rounds 3, and then another 3 in round 4. How'd you feel about their draft overall?
Vikings had one of my favorite drafts of any team in the league. They wanted Christian Darrisaw all along. They were able to move down 9 spots, still get their player in Christian Darrisaw, and pick up additional selections from the New York Jets. Darrisaw is a guy who fell because there was minor injury concerns and because he didn't interview that well. But the fact is this, he's a terrific left tackle prospect who can also play on the right side. He's big, he's strong, he's a punch in the face type of run blocker that can turn you off the line of scrimmage, but he's also good in pass protection, very mobile, can also block on the 2nd level. Kellen Mond at the top of round 3, I think was a real good pick. I thought Mond would go in the 2nd round. He's a developmental quarterback. He's got all the physical skills. He's got a tremendous arm, made some of the nicest throws of any of the quarterbacks at the Senior Bowl, can get the pass through the tight spots. He's fleet-footed, can get outside the pocket and make the throws on the move, but you got to develop him. He tends to stare down the primary target too much. Doesn't always make great decisions, but that should come in time. It's just a matter of if they can harvest the best out of Kellen Mond, they potentially got their starting quarterback of the future. I thought Chaz Surratt and Wyatt Davis were outstanding selections in round 3. Chaz Surratt is a good system fit, a prototypical 4-3 weak side linebacker that covers a lot of area. He's good in pursuit. He can drop off the line in plain space. I absolutely love Wyatt Davis in the 3rd round. At one point in time, I thought Wyatt Davis was worth a 1st round pick. hurt his knee in the national championship game. He's a mobile 325-pound lineman who is able to get out on the second level, take opponents from the action, but he's also he's a real leader on that offensive line. Very impressed by him. I'm kind of shocked that he lasted as long as he did. You get later on in their draft, 4th round. I love the Cameron Bynum pick. I think he's a guy that can play nickel, if not eventually develop into a starter. Bynum was a terrific player at Cal for 4 years. There were questions about his speed. He went to his pro day. He ran in the upper 4.4s. He had 3 good days of practice at the Senior Bowl. He's instinctive. He knows the position. He's got a great feel for coverage. He can play man to man. He can play in zone. This is one of those day 3 picks that I think is really going to be productive as a rookie, and people are going to wonder why this guy lasted so long. Smith-Marsette, the receiver in round 5 that they took, could also be a steal. He's got all the physical skills that you want in the receiver. He's shown flashes. Coming into the year, he was graded as a potential top 45 selection by scouts. Kind of played very uninspired football last year, but he's got the underlying ability. Zach Davidson of Central Missouri is a guy who's an interesting pick. I got to interview him before the draft for about 40 minutes. Outstanding interview, intelligent guy, also a punter, a real good punter. So if the punter gets hurt, the Vikings can stick him back there and he can boom him with his leg. But he's an athletic pass catcher who just has to learn to play at a better level of competition, a bigger level of competition. Central Missouri postponed their season, but I was glad to see Davidson get drafted. And Jalen Twyman from Pittsburgh, a guy who opted out of the season. I think he went a lot later than he expected. He's your prototypical 3 technique type of tackle, a little bit undersized, but quick, fundamentally sound, plays with great pad level, good change of direction, can rush the passer, can penetrate the gaps. I don't know he's got a great amount of upside, but he's someone who I think could be a good situational defensive lineman.
And speaking of defensive tackle, obviously the one name that really jumps out to me in their UDFA is big number 34 from that Oregon defense, Jordan Scott, somebody who I watched for years there and always stuck out because he's so stout, and just wearing number 34 as a defensive tackle is impossible to ignore.
You know, it's interesting because Scott, the prior 3 years to the 2020 draft, was a guy who would take on double and sometimes triple team blocks. And they couldn't move him off the line of scrimmage. I mean, it was impossible. And he wasn't a playmaker, but what would happen was he would occupy so much room and so many blockers in the middle of the line, he would allow his teammates to make plays on the ball. He lost 30 pounds coming into the season. I don't know that it was a good thing. It was a situation where he seemed to kind of lose some of his strength, as you would imagine, where you lose 10% of your body weight. He's got to find a happy space, a happy part, or a happy weight for him to play at to keep that strength, to keep that power. I like him as a prototypical nose tackle. I think it's worth a roll of the dice with the Minnesota Vikings to bring him in. The other guy that's very interesting that they signed was Chris Ellis, one of the few FCS players to sign as undrafted free agents, one of the few non-division 1A guys to sign. He's an athletic guy. He is, again, sort of like the Chaz Surratt, your prototypical 4-3 weak side linebacker. Very good in space, very good in coverage. The son of Luther Ellis, the former Utah defensive lineman who played in the NFL for a long time. I thought that was also a good signing by the Vikings.
That is going to do it for the NFC North in our 2021 NFL Draft recaps. Tony, thanks for coming along. I had a blast. I love talking about the draft, so this is a great 20 minutes to spend for me personally. We will be back with another episode coming up following the NFC Draft recaps.